Anna never imagined that an ordinary family picnic at the countryside house would become the moment her entire life quietly shifted onto a new path. What was meant to be a warm gathering, filled with laughter, grilled meat, and gentle spring air, slowly turned into a painful lesson about dignity, silence, and the price of enduring disrespect for too long. The idea had seemed innocent and even beautiful. It was Vitali's suggestion to invite Anna's parents to the dacha for the weekend. The weather forecast promised sunshine, the trees were just beginning to turn green, and the smell of early summer already lingered in the air. For Anna, this invitation carried special meaning. She had long dreamed of bringing both families together, hoping, perhaps naively, that familiarity would soften sharp edges and heal old tensions. 5 years of marriage had taught her to be cautious, but hope still lived somewhere deep inside her. Anna and Vitali had been married for exactly 5 years. 5 long years during which Anna had tried again and again to earn the approval of her mother-in-law, Larisa Germanovna. She cooked carefully chosen dishes, spoke politely, never raised her voice, and swallowed countless small humiliations. None of it ever seemed enough. In Larisa Germanovna's eyes, Anna was never worthy of her son. Too simple, too quiet, from the wrong family. And sometimes, when Larisa felt especially bold, she would use a word that burned more than any insult: poor. From a family of nobodies, as she liked to say. She loved Vitali, and for a long time she believed that love required patience. She convinced herself that if she endured quietly, things would eventually change. This weekend was supposed to be proof of that hope. Anna's parents arrived early in the afternoon. Her father, Sergei Dmitrievich, stepped out of the car with a calm smile and the quiet confidence of a man who had spent his life building things with his own hands. He was not wealthy, not influential, but he carried himself with dignity. For decades, he had worked as an engineer at a factory, and with his own savings and labor, he had built the very dacha they now stood on. To Anna, her father was strength without arrogance. Almost immediately, Sergei Dmitrievich offered to take care of the grill. Cooking meat was his small pride, especially his famous shashlik, marinated using a recipe he never fully revealed. Vitali gladly joined him, laughing and helping light the coals. For a moment, Anna watched them together and felt warmth in her chest. This is how families should be, she thought. On the veranda, Anna and her mother, Galina Mikhailovna, prepared salads and appetizers. They spoke quietly, enjoying the peaceful rhythm of chopping vegetables and setting the table. The air smelled of fresh grass, smoke, and spring. Everything felt right, until it didn't. Late in the afternoon, the sound of an approaching engine cut through the calm. A large black SUV slowly rolled onto the property, its polished surface looking strangely out of place against the modest wooden fence and garden beds. Anna felt a familiar tightening in her stomach. The car stopped, and from it stepped Larisa Germanovna. She was dressed in a spotless white pantsuit, as if she were attending a business reception rather than a countryside picnic. Behind her came Karina, her 35-year-old daughter, balancing uncomfortably in high-heeled shoes completely unsuitable for uneven ground. "Vitalenka," Larisa exclaimed loudly, opening her arms wide. "We decided to surprise you." Vitali froze for half a second before forcing a smile. He hugged his mother and sister, clearly uncomfortable. "Mama, you didn't say you were coming," he said carefully. "Anna's parents are here today." Larisa waved her hand dismissively. "So what? This is your dacha, isn't it? Or does a mother need permission to visit her own son now?" Technically, the dacha was registered in Vitali's name. It had been inherited from his maternal grandfather. Over the years, Anna and Vitali had invested time, money, and effort into renovating it, but legally it remained his property. Larisa never forgot that detail, and made sure no one else did either. From the moment she arrived, Larisa Germanovna behaved as if she were the unquestioned owner of everything around her. She greeted Anna's parents with cold politeness, barely hiding her disapproval. A quick glance was enough for her to judge, to categorize, to place them somewhere far below herself. She inspected the table and frowned. "These salads look very rustic," she said pointedly, emphasizing the word as if it were an insult. Without waiting for a response, she opened her large designer bag and pulled out containers filled with expensive store-bought delicacies. Anna felt her cheeks burn, but said nothing. Vitaly, as always, pretended not to notice. He smiled, joked awkwardly, and moved between people, desperately trying to keep the atmosphere light. It was his usual strategy: ignore the tension, and maybe it would dissolve on its own. It never did. As evening approached, Sergei Dmitrievich removed the first batch of shashlik from the grill. The meat was perfectly cooked, golden on the outside, juicy inside. He arranged it carefully on a large platter and carried it toward the table. "The shashlik is ready," he announced with quiet pride. "Who wants to try it first?" He began serving everyone, smiling warmly. When he reached Larisa Germanovna and Karina, Larisa suddenly twisted her lips in displeasure. "What kind of meat is this?" she asked sharply. "It's not pork, is it?" "Of course it's pork," Sergei Dmitrievich replied calmly. "The best cut. I chose it myself." "We don't eat pork," Larisa said firmly. "Karina has an allergy, and I'm on a diet." Anna clenched her fists under the table. She knew it was a lie. Karina had no allergies, and Larisa had never refused pork in her life, especially not the roasted kind she frequently ordered at restaurants. "Oh, don't worry," Larisa continued sweetly. "I brought chicken." She pulled out another container and turned to Vitaly. "Vitalik, be a dear and grill this for us." Without hesitation, without a single glance at his wife, Vitaly took the container and walked back to the grill. Anna felt something heavy settle in her chest. She could feel her parents' discomfort, the quiet embarrassment hanging in the air like thick smoke. Her father said nothing, but she knew him well enough to see it in his eyes. Still, Sergei Dmitrievich tried to save the situation. Taking a skewer with particularly juicy pieces of meat, he approached Karina with a gentle smile. "This is my special recipe, nothing harmful." He didn't even finish the sentence. Larisa Germanovna snatched the skewer straight from his hand. "Let your poor relatives grill sausages," she shouted loudly. "Meat is only for our family." The words cut through the air like a blade. Silence fell instantly. Galina Mikhailovna turned pale. Anna froze, unable to breathe. Vitaly stood by the grill, smiling weakly, as if he didn't fully understand what had just happened. Sergei Dmitrievich slowly straightened up. Something changed in his expression, something calm, resolute, and deeply serious. He looked at Larisa Germanovna, then at Vitaly, then at his daughter. And suddenly, he smiled. "You know what?" he said quietly. For a few endless seconds after Sergei Dmitrievich spoke those words, no one moved. The crackling of the coals, the faint smell of smoke, and the distant chirping of birds continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Nature, indifferent and calm, stood in cruel contrast to the emotional storm that had frozen the people around the table. Anna felt as though time had slowed. Her father's quiet sentence, "I think we'll be leaving," echoed in her head again and again. It was not said in anger, nor in despair. It was said with certainty, with dignity, with the kind of calm that only comes after a long, internal decision has already been made. "Papa?" Anna finally whispered, instinctively standing up. Sergei Dmitrievich raised his hand slightly, stopping her. He turned to his wife and gently took Galina Mikhailovna's trembling hand. "We're leaving now." Galina looked confused, her eyes darting between her daughter, her husband, and the hostile faces around them. She had always been a gentle woman, one who avoided confrontation and believed in patience above all else. But when she saw the firmness in her husband's eyes, she nodded silently. "But maybe we should just wait a little," she murmured uncertainly. "Perhaps it's just a misunderstanding." "No," Sergei Dmitrievich replied quietly but firmly. "There are things that should not be misunderstood." He then turned toward Vitaly. "Vitaly," he said evenly, without raising his voice, "I have only one question for you." Vitaly shifted uncomfortably. He wiped his hands on his jeans and glanced toward his mother, who stood with her arms crossed, lips tightly pressed together. "Do you agree with what your mother just said? Do you believe that we are poor nobodies who deserve to be treated like this?" The silence that followed was heavier than before. Anna watched her husband, her heart pounding painfully in her chest. She had waited for this moment for years, perhaps without even realizing it. A moment when he would finally speak, when he would finally choose. Vitali opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked at his mother, then at his sister, then at Anna. "Mama didn't mean it that way," he finally said, his voice weak. She speaks emotionally sometimes. You know how she is." That was all. No apology, no defense, no clear stance. Sergei Dmitrievich nodded slowly, as if he had just received the answer he expected. "I see," he said calmly. He turned to Anna and looked at her with the same warmth she had known since childhood, the look that had always made her feel safe, no matter how difficult life became. "Anya, my dear," he said gently, "you have a choice now. You can come with us, or you can stay." The words hung in the air like a final verdict. In that moment, Anna felt the weight of 5 years pressing down on her all at once. 5 years of forced smiles. 5 years of humiliation wrapped in polite phrases. 5 years of silence from the man who was supposed to stand beside her. She realized something with terrifying clarity. Her father was not simply leaving the dacha. He was offering her a way out, a chance to step away from a life where her dignity was constantly negotiated, postponed, or ignored. Anna slowly took a deep breath. "I'm going with you, Papa," she said firmly. Her voice did not shake. Vitali stared at her in disbelief. "Anya, wait," he said quickly. "You can't just leave like this. Let's talk. You're overreacting." Anna walked toward him, stopping just a step away. She looked into his eyes, eyes she had once loved, eyes that now seemed distant and unfamiliar. "I'm not overreacting," she said quietly. "I've been reacting like this inside for 5 years. Today I'm just finally saying it out loud." She paused, then added, "Call me when you're ready to talk without your mother listening. Until then, I can't stay." Behind them, Larisa Germanovna exploded. "This is absurd," she shouted. "You're destroying your marriage over a piece of meat. You should be ashamed." Sergei Dmitrievich did not respond to her words. Instead, he calmly walked back to the grill. One by one, he removed the remaining skewers of shashlik, wrapped them carefully in foil, and placed them into his bag. "I'll take this with us," he said evenly. "You can enjoy your chicken breast." Larisa gasped, but said nothing. Without another word, Sergei Dmitrievich helped his wife and daughter gather their belongings. They walked toward the car slowly, their movements steady, deliberate. As Anna sat in the passenger seat, she felt tears rolling down her cheeks. Not from grief, but from relief. For the first time in years, she felt supported, protected. Just as the engine started, Vitali ran out onto the porch. "Anya," he called desperately, "you can't just walk away from everything we've built." Anna looked at him through the open window. "I can," she replied calmly. "I always believed love could overcome anything. But love has boundaries, and your mother crossed them today. And you let her." Sergei Dmitrievich started the car, and they drove away, leaving Vitali standing alone on the porch of the dacha. That evening, sitting in the small kitchen of her parents' apartment, they finally ate the shashlik together. Despite everything, it tasted unbelievably good. Anna cried softly, resting her head on her father's shoulder. "Thank you, Papa," she whispered, "for not staying silent, for taking me away from there." Sergei Dmitrievich stroked her hair gently. "My dear," he said, "in life, it doesn't matter whether a person is rich or poor. What matters is whether they remain human." The days that followed the picnic passed in a strange, heavy quiet. For Anna, it felt as if the world had slowed down, giving her space to breathe for the first time in years. The tension that had lived in her chest for so long had not disappeared entirely, but it had loosened its grip. She was no longer waking up with the familiar anxiety of wondering what she would have to endure next. She stayed at her parents' apartment, sleeping in her childhood room. The walls were the same, the furniture unchanged, and yet everything felt different. For the first time since her marriage, Anna felt emotionally safe. No one criticized her tone, her cooking, or her background. No one made her feel small. Her father moved quietly around the house, careful not to overwhelm her with questions. He believed that healing did not require constant conversation. Sometimes, silence was more respectful than words. Her mother, Galina Mikhailovna, expressed care through food, placing warm plates in front of Anna without asking whether she was hungry. On the third day, the phone rang. Anna stared at the screen before answering. Vitaly. She hesitated for several seconds, then picked up. Anya. His voice sounded tired, strained, as if he had not slept. I've been thinking about everything. Anna leaned back against the chair and closed her eyes. I'm listening, she said quietly. He spoke quickly, almost nervously. He apologized for the scene at the dacha, said his mother had gone too far, claimed he never meant for things to escalate the way they did. He promised that he had spoken to Larisa Germanovna, that he had finally drawn a line. I told her she can't interfere anymore, he said. I gave her an ultimatum. I'm ready to move out of the dacha, sell it, buy a new place, just for us. Just you and me. Anna listened without interrupting. When he finished, there was a pause. 5 years, Vitaly, she said slowly. 5 years you smiled while your mother humiliated me. 5 years you stayed silent when I needed you most. He tried to interrupt, but she continued. This isn't about the dacha, it's about you. About the fact that you chose comfort over courage. Every single time. Vitaly was quiet. I didn't realize it was that bad, he said weakly. That's exactly the problem, Anna replied softly. You didn't want to realize it. She ended the call without shouting, without anger. The decision had already been made inside her. The divorce process was surprisingly calm. Larisa Germanovna never appeared at the hearings. Some said she feared running into Sergei Dmitrievich again. Others believed she simply could not tolerate being in a room where she had no authority. Vitaly did not argue over property. He signed everything without protest. Shame sat heavily on his shoulders, visible in the way he avoided eye contact. When it was over, Anna expected to feel broken. Instead, she felt light. Months passed. Slowly, Anna rebuilt herself. Not dramatically, not loudly, but carefully. She returned to routines she had abandoned long ago. She took walks alone. She laughed more freely. She rediscovered the quiet confidence she had once possessed, before constant criticism had eroded it. A year later, fate introduced her to Artyom. They met unexpectedly in the most ordinary of ways. Artyom was an architect working on the restoration of a historic building in the city. He was open, thoughtful, and spoke with sincerity rather than charm. What Anna noticed first was not what he said, but how he listened. He did not interrupt. He did not dismiss. He did not minimize her experiences. When Anna eventually told him about her previous marriage and her former mother-in-law, she expected awkwardness or pity. Instead, Artyom simply nodded. No one has the right to humiliate people they claim to love, he said calmly, especially not family. Those words stayed with her. When Artyom later came to meet Anna's parents for the first time, Sergei Dmitrievich, of course, prepared his famous shashlik. The familiar smell filled the yard, carrying memories both painful and comforting. After dinner, when they were alone on the veranda, Artyom spoke quietly. Sergei Dmitrievich, he said, Anna told me about what happened with her former in-laws. I want you to know something. Sergei Dmitrievich looked at him attentively. I will never allow anyone to treat your daughter or you like that. Not ever. Sergei Dmitrievich smiled and firmly shook his hand. In that moment, he understood. This man knew the value of respect. Anna's life no longer felt like something she was merely surviving. It felt lived, intentionally, calmly, and with self-respect. The year that followed her meeting with Artyom passed quietly, without drama or sharp turns, and that quietness itself became proof that she had chosen the right path. When Artyom proposed, it was simple and sincere. No grand gestures, no spectators, just honesty. Anna said yes without fear, without hesitation, and without the heavy doubt that had once accompanied her every decision. Their wedding took place in a cozy countryside restaurant, surrounded by trees and warm light. It was not extravagant, but it was filled with people who genuinely wished them happiness. Sergei Dmitrievich raised a toast that evening, his voice steady but deeply emotional. "To a real family," he said, lifting his glass. "Not one where someone believes they are above others, but one where everyone is equal in their right to respect, dignity, and happiness." Anna felt tears in her eyes as she looked around. For the first time, she felt no tension, no fear of judgment, no silent competition for power. She felt safe. A year later, Anna and Artyom welcomed their daughter into the world. They named her Valentina, in honor of Artyom's grandmother, a woman remembered for kindness and strength. Parenthood brought exhaustion, yes, but also a new depth of joy Anna had never known before. Every weekend, Sergei Dmitrievich visited their home, often carrying a familiar bundle wrapped carefully in foil. His shashlik had become more than just food. It was a ritual, a reminder that dignity, once defended, has the power to shape generations. Looking at his daughter, now confident, loved, and surrounded by respect, Sergei Dmitrievich knew that the decision he made that day at the dacha had been the right one. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was necessary. As for Vitaly, life continued, but not as he had imagined. He remained living with his mother and sister. Occasionally, Anna would see him in the city. He looked older than his years, tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. Once he tried to speak to her, admitting that he still loved her and regretted everything that had happened. Anna listened politely, then shook her head. "You know," she said calmly, "I'm actually grateful to your mother for that shashlik incident. It helped me understand that some things are priceless, like self-respect and a father's love." 5 years after those events, Anna and Artyom bought a dacha of their own, just a short distance from her parents. Every weekend, the family gathered there, laughing, cooking, and sharing stories. And whenever Sergei Dmitrievich stood by the grill, everyone knew this was not just food. It was the taste of unity, of boundaries that were finally respected, of love that did not require silence. People say that Larisa Germanovna still tells acquaintances how her daughter-in-law left her son over a piece of meat. But no one believes those stories anymore. Because a real family is not built on pride or superiority. It is built on support. And Sergei Dmitrievich understood that better than anyone.